it's so subtle between, you know, what is the color of fog. You can't go like too colorful or it looks too garish. You can't go too light or you can't see what color it is. You can't make the trees too light or they disappear. You have to make them dark enough so that you can see them but not see them and they appear like fog is in front of them. So it's been a real challenge. And I've done, I would say, way over 40 studies for just the Foggy Grove part of the paintings. So then over here, this is a little big. I don't go like real big with paintings. The biggest I'm painting right now is 3x4. But this is a nice size. I think it's big enough to involve a person kind of physically with that size, but it's not like too overwhelming. And it fits in the back of my Honda Pilot. So this is the third part here. And these are, I call this part across the lake. We live on Big Stone Lake in Ortonville, and every winter, the sun sets directly across the lake from our cabin, I call it. So that's the time of year that I do these paintings of the lake. I think it's much more interesting when the lake is frozen over, there's snow on the lake. The colors in the winter are just amazing. The sunset colors are amazing. Sometimes they're subtle, sometimes they're garish, but still harmonious, which nature always has a way of doing that. The colors are always perfect in nature. You know? So, when I was learning to paint landscapes, I was taking a class from my guys. How do you get, you know, harmonious colors? He said, just paint what you see, which it's a little oversimplified, actually. The other trick, you might say, in painting harmonious colors in a landscape is limit your colors to a red, a blue, and a yellow, and a white, and mix all your other colors from just those three colors. And your colors will really always be harmonious. That's very simple. I painted for years just using the three colors in white, but then after a while you get a little bored. You say, oh no, I really need another blue or two, and I need this and that. But I never really got above 7 colors, you know, for painting traditional. With these paintings, I have a ton of colors. I have lots of colors. I do mix some, but usually it'll be like I'm mixing this into this or this into this to make this. That's, you know, but this will come right out of a tube and this will come right out of a tube and this will be a combination of the two. And the same, like this will be a cerulean blue, this will be a yellow ochre, and I'll mix those two to get that greenish blue, you know, so. But there are lots of special colors that I'm experimenting with. There's a color from Gamblin Paints called Radiant White, which is a very like a white. It's a titanium white, but they just squeeze a lot more titanium into the tube than would normally fit there, and it does really actually make it very white. And so that's kind of my introduction to the paintings. The reason, another couple of little things that one of my nitpicking things is that I'm going to come in on the signature. A lot of paintings are ruined by a bad signature. So I try to make a signature very small and not like scrolly or anything, just very straightforward. So just keep it, you know, I found a very, very, very fine point black marker that I use now. I used to paint my signature on and just choose the colors so carefully so that you barely saw it. And the other thing is, I've really never framed paintings in white frames. And the reason I did it with these is that I'm working with very subtle colors, very close values. A lot of the colors are very gray. And it seemed like the only thing that looked good to bring out the colors with this kind of painting are the white frames. And then I've always loved these floater frames to, you know, have a reveal around the edge of it. And so that's any questions from the audience?
Not yet.
Oh, not yet.
So Richard, you had mentioned when we were interviewing that Robert Henry about painting less of the facts and more of the spirit. So I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about Robert Henry and how you incorporate that philosophy into your paintings.
Okay, yes. One direction I went to paint less of the facts was to simplify the colors and color masses. In other words, just simplifying a landscape down to a series of colored bands that vary in color, in grayness, in light and dark values, and that's another thing. Good tip is like you usually want to paint in values as well as color, because paintings read better if it reads well using, you know, if the values read, then the colors will read even better. So I painted in bands of color, usually mixed one at a time, which visually blend together, viewed from a distance, and can be seen as discrete bands of color if viewed up close. And my technique is limited to applying colors by brush, using pencil guidelines, and freehand painting oil paint mixed with cold wax medium for flow and a matte surface when dry. And where the edges meet, I don't use masking tape. It's all freehand, so that where the edges meet, they're not mechanically perfect. I try to paint them as perfect as I can, but being a human being and a little shaky, the paint builds up on that edge. It's not exactly straight. It wavers up and down a little bit. And also, since I keep the values and colors really close, it helps the bands of color to blend one into the other and to have a less mechanical feel than if they were simply taped off and you know, use masking tape. So that little concerns are big concerns to me.
If anyone has any questions, feel free to type them in the chat and we will get those to Richard. While we're waiting for other questions, we are curious about your process of going from the realistic representational landscapes to the abstract landscapes. What sort of time frame did that take for you? Was it like, well, yesterday I painted landscapes and today I'm doing abstract? So yeah. What was that process like?
Yeah, that's a good question. After I ended my graphic design career after 20 years as a designer, and I wanted to get back into fine art, or I thought that was stretching, I want to go. Then you have to choose, I mean, it's like anything goes, you got a world of choices. So I spent probably, well, at least a year, and probably more like a year and a half, exploring different avenues of image making, and I hit upon representational painting, which intrigued me because I'd never done it. All of my college education had nothing to do with representational anything except, hours and hours and hours of life drawing classes, which I don't know what, it was just torture. But the school at that time was more interested in abstract expressionism. It was during the 60s. And so, like representational painting was just not taught. In fact, there was a studio. I went to the University of Iowa for my undergraduate, and there was a painting studio there, which had been built many, many years ago, still being used, that was originally called the Norman Rockwell Studio. Well, at that time, Norman Rockwell was very much out of style, very much out of style. And everybody was embarrassed that he'd ever taught there and so on. So nobody ever referred to it as the Rockwell Studio. So I was never exposed to representational painting. So I just started doing it. I just started experimenting. And you ask your kind of question, okay, what do I want to do? You just have to decide that first, what I want to do. Then what do I need to do that? Well, I needed to learn a lot of new skills and new equipment and stuff like that. And then you have to find the sources of where you can learn these things. And some of it being in books, although there are really, I think, 2 books that are any good about landscape painting. All you need is those 2 books. And other than that, taking some seminars from some artists who I really respected their work and who I thought were, people to emulate. So that got me into representational. And then I did the same thing after the representational phase came to an end. I just once again started experimenting, but I knew I wanted to move in a more abstract direction, because I've been saying, in the back of my head for 10 years, oh geez, I really like to get back to some more abstract painting. And so again, I spent we moved up here to Ortonville, and I spent about a year working down in our basement on just tons of different directions, just painting ugly, awful stuff, you just paint worse stuff, until something kind of started to congeal and move in a direction that I liked. And then I was fortunate to get a studio downtown, or space for a studio downtown Ortonville, which really is nice. And so then I think I've been doing this series here for about 3 years, Chrissy.
Yeah, 2.5.
2.5 to 3 years. So I had one small show in Bird Island, Minnesota, and this is only the second place that these paintings have ever been shown.
Richard, can you tell us what those 2 books are that you felt were the best for painting?
Yes, one is, like I mentioned, John Carlson's Guide to Landscape Painting. It's published by Dover, I hope. Very inexpensive book, written in 1925. And it's a little hard. I mean, very good painters will keep referring to that book over their whole career. Really, it's not a book to read once and throw it away, but it's just full of gems. And even the first time you read it, you look at some of these gems, like the colors of clouds. How do clouds change color in the sky from clouds low on the horizon to clouds way up in the zenith area. And it's like, once that's pointed out, you see it. But if it's not pointed out, you don't see it. So then he doesn't tell you how to paint clouds. He just says, don't make them look like white potatoes. But exactly how to do it, it's more like left up to the individual. And that was the two. Oh, yes, and the other one is Kevin McPherson. Kevin McPherson. He's written, I think, 2 books, and it's the first book that he wrote. Get his first book, because in that book, the whole book is based on how to paint with a red, blue, and yellow and white. The next book he wrote was after he had become a spokesman for the Gamblin Paint Company, and his paint palette expanded to be like humongous. it's just but then he had to sell paint. But so the first one, it's you know what you. It's really complicated. Painting is very complicated. So you want to make it as simple as you can, if you can. So by using just these 3 colors, you learn, well, the colors will stay harmonious. You learn about color mixing. You learn how by mixing yellow, red, and blue, you can make a brown. You can make colors you never dream of with just these 3 colors. And after you paint it a while, well, maybe you want to insert a special blue or something else, but you can basically make all your sky colors with just 1 blue. It's an ultramarine blue, by adding a little yellow to it or a little red to it, and it's a great way to learn.
We have a question online about whether or not you are continuing to work on this series and this type of painting, or if you're on to something new.
I move very slowly. So, I think this will keep me going a while. But I've recently discovered some new paints that I want to try out. And it's going to sound like I'm working for the Gamblin Paint Company too. But I mentioned this radiant white, which is really a neat white when you want to have sparkly color. You know, you might not use it if you were just a regular landscape painter. I mean, a traditional landscape painter, but for this purpose, I think it works pretty well. And then, lo and behold, they also have a line of radiant colors, which are just actually some standard colors that have a very, very high tinting value, like one of the phthalo blues. And so they'll use that, mix that with white. And these colors you can, I try to work with very, very subtle light values a lot of the time. So you can add a lot of white to those colors and they will keep their color identity. A lot of colors will just kind of go gray or just disappear, or you won't really see them. With these, they'll be very, very subtle, but you can still see them glowing. So I've just started on these, and I'm very intrigued to explore those.
So we have another question online. How much did your new location on Big Stone Lake influence moving to abstract painting?
Well, quite a bit. For example, these paintings here, well, let's just do this one here. This is Lake Study 10. This is what we see looking across Big Stone Lake, basically. We see the sunset here. And what's interesting, and then the colors of the ice. These are all winter paintings, you know. And what I found is like the ice will progress like dark in the background and light in the front, just the opposite of what land usually does. So I mean, all the elements are there for an abstraction, you know, if you just like, and then what I do is I'll look out it happens too fast to paint. This color changing, this color phenomenon is very ephemeral. You know, I love ephemeral effects. They just last for seconds, really. And so I will take color notes. I will draw little shapes, and then I'll say, the ice tonight looks really cerulean, and it gets more yellow as it comes forward. So that'll be my note. And then hopefully the next day or a few days, I might do a little painting using those notes. So I found that to be the best. Photographs don't capture it, and they're kind of fool you with the color. But I rely on my eyes and taking notes.
Good. Looking at your groups of paintings, I am reminded of Monet's haystack paintings and the Rouen Cathedral series, where he focused on the effects of light at different times of day. What artists do you admire or look to for inspiration?
Yes, thank you for being reminded of Monet. That puts me in pretty good company. Yes, and that is, I mean, we have that in common, his paintings and mine, that I do like the effects of light at different times of day. And so I kind of never thought about that, but that's very true. You know, to be honest, I really didn't study anybody or have anybody in mind when I developed these paintings. I mean, people have said, well, one very nice lady said, oh, these remind me of Mark Rothko. I thought, oh, yeah, well, that's nice. So then she bought a painting and then sent me a card with a Rothko painting on it. But I don't like to talk about, I mean, some of these things are really kind of mysterious and they're very hard to talk about. Rothko's work was very mysterious and very hard to talk about. I think the reason it's so interesting is that it goes beyond language. That's the point at which it gets interesting. You know, if you still talk about it and describe it and so on, you're in the ordinary world. But that point where an image or a landscape or a sunrise, whatever, goes beyond language, then you're into mystery, the divine mystery, if you would. So, but I don't really think about it. I just think, well, let's do my best this time and see how it goes. And I don't think about, I used to, when I would do traditional landscapes, I'd worry, is this going to be a good painting? Mm-hmm. Am I making a good painting? And that usually just kills it right there, because your mind is distracted and you're thinking about something you shouldn't think about. You should just, take it one step at a time, what's right in front of your nose. Okay, and this and that, and how does that? Okay, fine. And a lot of those decisions are nonverbal decisions. It's visual decisions, and it's a different kind of learning.
Are there more questions from folks online? Oh, we got a comment that says, love the idea of transcending language.
Oh, so do I. Well, this gets into the metaphysical realm. And that realm has pretty much been forgotten in this age. So it's kind of nice to look into that because it's a very fascinating area. It's a very rich area. So, you know, so you read books about metaphysical realm and they always say, yeah, but, you know, of course, I can't describe what it is. And they write book after book after book. But, well, they'll point to it. You know, they can even point to it, an illusion. You know, bring in a Rumi poem or something. The poetical language can sometimes to point to these ideas better than, you know, ordinary language. So we like to think about metaphysical things sometimes.
We have someone who says, this is a great talk. Thank you. Well, thank you so much, Richard, for being here and for sharing about your work.
Yeah.
And this is a very enjoyable show. I think it brings some peacefulness, at least into my life, with the calmness of the paintings, the tranquility, and you know, they're very pleasing to see the color transitions and you know, capturing the things that we see out here out on the prairie. That's one of our advantages, right?
Yes, it is.
To see the colors and in the morning and in the evening.
Yes, it is. And the work, I mean, the physical act of painting all these bands is very meditative. It slows me way down. It gets my mind in a very good place. It takes, it quiets my mind down, so I'm not, there's a lot of words scurrying around in there. So I hope that does come across because they're subtle, they're not gonna.
Yeah, we thank you so much, Richard, for talking and sharing about your personal process and your work. And thank you to Christine, Richard's partner, for being here and supporting also. But we have Richard Krogstad's show here until April 10th. So stop by and check it out at your convenience. We are open here at the Prairie Renaissance Cultural Alliance on Thursdays from 10 to 6 and Fridays and Saturdays from 10 to 2.
And I would like to thank everybody for watching and for your questions. Those are very good questions. I always appreciate being made to think a little bit. And you did that.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. There's a survey to fill out in the chat. So feel free to grab that link and fill out the survey. That really helps us with future grant applications and tracking the number of attendees and getting some feedback about what you enjoyed and what you want to see in the future. So please take just a minute to fill out that survey. Thank you.